Hey guys, this lecture is going to be on the integumentary system. These are the lesson objectives. So again, I'll give you a few seconds to look those over. Okay, so the anatomy of the skin is as follows. It's part of the integumentary system. The epidermis is the outermost layer. There are 4 to 5 layers of epithelial cells. Underneath that, there's a stratum basale. It's the deepest layer of the epidermis, and that is where new skin cells are produced. Skin cells gradually become keratinized and rise to the surface. The stratum corneum is the outermost layer of the epidermis. They are flat and dead protective cells that, as I mentioned before, are filled with keratin. They constantly fall off and are replaced from below. There are other cells that produce melanin. Melanin is the chemical that gives color to the skin and protects us from sunlight. The dermis is the next layer down. It has connective tissue, nerves, blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and this is where the support and nourishment for the rest of the skin originates. And beneath the dermis is the subcutaneous layer, which is connective tissue and fat. And that is the last layer before you get into muscle. So here's a cross-section of the skin. There is hair, epidermis, the dermis, and subcutaneous layer. In the subcutaneous layer, you can see the adipose or fat tissue. There's a hair follicle. The erector pili is this muscle right along here. When that contracts, the hair stands up on end. Now, arteries and nerves, sudoriferous or sweat glands, sebaceous or oil glands. The stratum basale is where the stratum corneum cells are produced, and as they raise up and become keratinized, they are the stratum corneum on the outside here. So the sudoriferous or sweat glands regulate temperature by evaporating to cool the body. And the sebaceous glands produce an oily fluid to lubricate and protect the skin. The hair is a keratin-containing dead structure, develops within the follicle and grows out from there. The nails are also keratin. They grow from the proximal end where that white is in your fingernail bed. And they are also for protection. So here are roots pertaining to the skin that you'll want to be familiar with, and key terms that you're going to want to be familiar with. I'm going to be using them during lecture, and after studying these and listening to the lecture, they should trip off your tongue. So clinically, dermatology is the study of skin and skin diseases. It can be observed for color, pigmentation, lesions, and felt, palpated, see how much moisture there is and all those other characteristics. Wounds can be caused by trauma or surgery. Evisceration is an interesting word. It is when something protrudes through something else through a cut of some kind. And typically over here, evisceration, we're talking about a slice in the abdomen that allows the underlying organs to come out through the skin and muscle tissue and eviscerate out. For wounds to heal, There's an exudate that comes out close. First, you want it to be clear, but sometimes it does get bloody if there are blood cells that are damaged, and if a secondary infection sets in, it can actually contain pus. So for proper wound healing, you definitely want to keep it clean to avoid those infections. Have proper circulation so you can get nutrition to the area for the most fast healing. And sometimes you can undergo a procedure called cicatrization, where there is scars that are formed and where you lose some of the original structure of the dermis and epidermis. So debridement is the removal of dead or damaged tissue to allow the healthy tissue to grow up. It can be done by cutting or scrubbing. Enzymes will dissolve the dead or damaged tissue, and you can also undergo eschorotomy, which is removal of scar tissue if it does build up too much. If the wound is deep enough, a person can end up needing a skin graft. There are two types, a full thickness skin graft, which is both the epidermis and dermis, and a split thickness skin graft is more superficial, which just covers the epidermis. So burns can be caused by all of these, as we see right here, and they are assessed by both the depth of the damage, how many layers of skin it goes through, and the percentage of body area that's affected. So the depth of the burn can be characterized by the least serious is superficial, and it's only the epidermis. The skin gets red and dry without that much pain. A superficial partial thickness can be the epidermis and starting in on the dermis. And there will be blisters oftentimes, and this is the most painful type of burn, and I will explain why. When we're talking about deep partial thickness, this has both the epidermis and dermis damaged, and you can get the blisters, weeping surface, and all this, but it's less painful because the nerves have been damaged, and you don't get the pain until the healing starts and the nerves start re-innervating the area. Full thickness goes all the way down as far as the subcutaneous tissue, and this actually looks like charred meat at this stage, and it can cause the loss of tissues including entire digits and limbs, and this is when skin grafting can be a requirement. So that's the depth. The percentage of body area is the other part of staging a burn. So we're going to talk about the rule of nines. So the areas of the body are assigned percentages and multiples of 9, and I will explain what that means in the next slide. And there's also the London Browder. We're not going to go into that, but that's another way to stage burn categorizations as well. So the rule of nines. So you can see all of these areas are some factor of 9. The head is 4.5%, half of 9. Each arm is 4.5%. The torso is double 9%, and each leg is 9%, and the groin is 1%. I don't know why they picked that, but that is what is used. So to treat burns, can have all of these things involved. Pain control, certainly, as the nerves start innervating the areas again, and post-traumatic stress, because having deep burns over a large part of the body is very traumatic psychologically. A pressure ulcer is dead or necrotic skin that results from skin covering bony projections, having pressure on them for too long, and losing blood supply, and you get a lesion in the area, can get secondary bacterial infections, and ulcers can go all the way down to the subcutaneous in the worst areas and even into the bone. Bony areas are prone to pressure ulcers are the sacrum, the heel, elbows, the bony part of the pelvis or the ischial area, and the greater trochanter, which is the head of the big leg bone that you can feel on your side. So pressure ulcers are indicative of death of the tissue. Age is a very big predisposing factor. Unable to recover from lesions as quickly, don't move around as much, and just in general not as healthy as when you're younger. Obesity, more heavier people are going to put more pressure on those bony areas. And of course, infection will lower your ability to fight off infections in a pressure ulcer. They first appear as just redness of the skin. If they're ignored at that point, they should not be, but it can go all the way through the skin into the muscle and penetrate all the way to the bone, in fact, and can require a very long time to heal in the worst case scenarios. So to prevent them, you need pads and mattresses that will take some of the pressure off those bony areas, regularly cleanse and dry the area so it's not a good environment for the bacterial infections, and frequently change positions just so you can keep nutrition and blood flow going to this area so you don't end up with a necrotic tissue. And in dermatitis, there's atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema or eczema. This is an allergic form of dermatitis. Don't know why it is, what causes it exactly, but there are several things that can make it worse. Certainly allergies can contribute. That's the main thing, allergies and skin irritants. There's contact dermatitis as well, which is when you touch something that is an allergen, and seborrheic or oily dermatitis, and stasis dermatitis. And that is all I have on this today. Thank you very much.